Snuff was the original translation of snuff, now called biyan in many Qing dynasty documents. This is very interesting because it has a double meaning. The Chinese character for scholar is also shu, implying that snuff was something that scholars, shuren, would often have and use. Snuff originally came to China from the West, and after it arrived in China, it quickly became a popular fashion at the Qing imperial court. Let us enter the exhibition through this door, with its opening shaped like a snuff bottle. In this exhibition, the museum deliberately used the concept of glass walls to echo the extensive use of glass in the production of snuff. This is the first impression visitors will get when they enter the gallery. As I previously mentioned, snuff was originally translated into Chinese as shu na hu and was known as a medicinal ingredient that came over from the West. If I was to speak of its function, I'd say that it could be somewhat similar to eating mints today. When you breathe in the aroma, your nose will feel a brisk and tingly sensation. In the West, people would often use snuff boxes, biyan he, both to store and take snuff from. After snuff arrived in China, however, it began to be packaged in snuff bottles, biyan hu, instead. These bottles always had a narrow opening at the mouth and a wide body, fitted with a spoon attached to the cover. It was a popular trend specific to its use in China. You would often see wealthy individuals carrying a snuff bottle, whilst also wearing a pocket watch and an ornamental thumb ring. These were the three most popular fashions of that era for men: thumb rings, snuff-taking, and pocket watches, all displays of respectability to show that the wearer was a respectable gentleman with wealth and status. Now we'll look at some items on display. The theme of this first area of the gallery here is innovation. The first item is this enamel on glass snuff bottle. It's very famous because it's the only snuff bottle in this style that was enameled during the period of the Yongzheng Emperor, who reigned from 1722 to 1735. You can see it was very exquisitely made, in the form of a section of bamboo, and at the top you can even see the attention to detail in the brown enamel spots that appear as if they were on a real bamboo stalk. There are also two spiders enameled on the glass bottle, which form a rebus, meaning double happiness. In this display case, you can see all sorts of items made of glass, such as this Fami Rose enameled glass piece from the Qianlong period. Its appearance is rather unusual, as it is square-shaped. Two of the sides depict a fisherman's wife. You can see she is carrying fish in her basket. The other two sides are painted only in one colour, ruby red enamel, which is a painting technique that was popular at the time, to emphasize the contrasting beauty in the more elaborate paintings of the fisherman's wife. This bottle is in the style of the four-sided glass container which was often used previously to store medicine. In early documents, you can actually see that medicine and snuff bottles had a lot of overlap in their terms of use. The next example is a more plain glass bottle, but it has an elaborately decorated outer box in cloisonne with a hinged lid in which the bottle can be encased to protect it. The bottle is fashioned from milk-white glass imitating jade and fits snugly into the cloisonne case. There are lots of different glass bottles in this case, all different colours and sizes. Many of them were used as snuff bottles and as medicine containers, such as this container here. The opening at the top was polished, and it's larger than the opening of your typical snuff bottle. The bottle is made in the shape of a cricket cage, fitted with a stopper. Cricket cages were used for keeping fighting crickets. Glass was considered to be a very valuable and popular material. It was generally the wealthy elite who could afford to use it for their snuff bottles. On that side of the display case, you see mostly single-colour or monochrome snuff bottles, but further on there are some patterned and multicoloured ones. Here is an example where two colours of glass are fused together. You might have also noticed that early snuff bottles were all very small, maybe smaller than you'd imagined they would be. This is because early snuff was imported from the West, so it was likely very expensive, and therefore people consumed it in small amounts. However, after China began to produce its own snuff domestically, it became more affordable, and the snuff bottles became larger to accommodate for the larger amounts being used, large enough that you could fit your whole hand around it. Here we can see more single-colour snuff bottles. Some of them have flower patterns, some of them are carved or engraved. Most of these designs were influenced by the West, but were specifically for Chinese buyers. In the West, snuff boxes often had a sucking pipe of sorts, somewhat similar to that in a perfume bottle shown here. But for the Chinese market, they added a lid and spoon instead, making it a snuff bottle. This very elaborate perfume bottle would likely have been offered as a presentation gift to the emperor from dignitaries in Europe. Then over here, you can see a type of snuff bottle called mixed glass or overlay snuff bottle. This type of bottle was made by combining two or more different colours of glass, usually with one layered on top of the other to form the design. This technique, borrowed from jade working, began to be used commonly during the Qianlong period. It may not look so special, but when you think about it, the designs are carved over an extremely thin layer of glass, requiring a great deal of precision. On the topic of innovation, which is the theme of this section of the exhibit, besides just the actual manufacturing of the snuff bottles themselves, we also must acknowledge the innovation in painting techniques. Here you can see an example from the Kangxi period. This one is very interesting, as along with a copper body, it also has metal inlay to echo the outline for the enamel decoration. If one were to compare the Kangxi period to the Yongcheng and Qianlong periods, I would say that the Kangxi style is more natural, bold, and unrestrained. Over here, all of these pieces are from the Yongcheng period. These bottles are all extremely intricate, refined, and exquisitely executed, that you can see all kinds of unique, minute details in the painting styles. The colours chosen are also very pleasing to the eye. Yongcheng was a very disciplined emperor with refined taste and high standards, as was reflected by the bamboo-shaped enamelled glass bottle we saw earlier. We've recently celebrated the Mid-Autumn Festival. Here's an example of a bottle featuring a painting of jade rabbits under the shade of an osmanthus tree. The paintings enclosed in the roundels are intricate and detailed and are inspired by Western painting techniques, a style that reflected the taste of the period. The scenes are compact, with overall designs done in a variety of techniques. For example, this one depicts a mother and child in the center cartouche, surrounded by flowers, with the sides executed in the Western style. These two on the right are very special. The bottles have gold bodies, and on the side of the bottle, designs were outlined in gold wires and filled with enamel, while the center cartouches were left plain for the subsequent enamel painting of Madonna and Child. This creates a very rich and dense composition. The last three are from the Jiaqing period. You can see clearly the differences in quality, as manufacturing was in decline from that period onwards. All of the Yongcheng era pieces were recovered from the Qianqing Palace in the Forbidden City in Beijing. The Qianlong Emperor himself thought that the Yongcheng period snuff bottles were very beautiful, so he had his own collection and grouped them together. In this case are displayed pieces from the Qianlong period that highlights examples of the combination of Western style and Chinese style painting techniques. These bottles also use a combination of painted enamel and cloisonné enamel. I often have people ask me what they should focus on when coming to view this exhibit. Obviously, I always say it's important to see some snuff bottles that are extremely rare. While all the bottles we viewed before were rare, I believe this next case of 43 bottles is a must-see. The outer box for these snuff bottles is made using Yangshi He, similar to a type of lacquerware that was popular in the late Ming dynasty and was used to store precious objects. The box was light and beautifully made, perfect for storing snuff bottles. There are many such boxes in the palace collection, probably received as diplomatic gifts from Japan. This unique piece is made of black lacquer on the outside, and it has 3 layers or drawers with compartments that all fit together. Each layer of drawers can fit about 12 to 15 snuff bottles in it, so it can hold up to 45 in total. Because of all the different size shelves and compartments, this Curio box is really quite an efficient and extraordinary way to store highly prized bottles. Now, all these bottles you see here are painted enamel on glass. This type of bottle is especially rare because the technique required is complicated and difficult. The melting points of enamel and glass are very close together, so when the temperature is too high, it will melt the glass. But if the temperature is not hot enough, the enamel would not adhere to the bottle. At this time, when the temperature was controlled manually, it may require repeated firing to achieve the desired results. Each of these 43 bottles is unique and distinct in pattern and design. It is very impressive how the artisans overcame all the challenges to produce so many beautiful enamel glass bottles. Based on my own research, most interesting is that none of these snuff bottles were ever actually used, for no trace of snuff can be found in the interior. When each Qing emperor passed away, he would leave his most used articles behind in his room. When Kangxi passed away, the Yongcheng emperor found many snuff bottles among his possessions. When the Yongcheng emperor passed away, it was the same. However, when Qianlong passed away, there was not a single snuff bottle found amongst his most used possessions, although he had collected them over many years. This indicates that he collected them for personal enjoyment rather than recreational use. The overlay glass snuff bottles I mentioned earlier are the most commonly found among collections, so we've chosen to showcase some where the shape or design is especially interesting or meaningful. For this example I'm about to show you has the characters Wan Shu Wu Jiang on it, which means may you enjoy boundless longevity. Some bottles have designs related also to the imperial examinations. We have both single colour and some multicolored pieces, such as this one, which features green for the lotus leaves, white for the lotus flowers, and then brown to show the earth underneath. In this exhibit, many bottles are made with glass that can be used to make other types of objects as well. However, the snuff bottles shown here are made with a type of glass that was reserved exclusively for snuff bottles. The inner surface of the clear glass bottle was frosted to allow painting on the inside. This inside painting technology was developed in the late Qing, while other snuff bottles, such as those made with enamel, were traditionally made within the palace. These bottles were made by renowned experts and then eventually entered the palace collection. The bottles were painted on the inside using ink and watercolours through the narrow neck, with a bamboo stick which was turned at the end. The bottles shown here are from a number of well-known inside painted artists from the middle school. The enamel piece you see in this case, which features a beautiful Western lady, was common among imported snuff bottles during the Qing dynasty. While the part of the bottle surrounding the enamel piece has a Chinese-inspired design, the actual painting on the enamel is Western-inspired. There were many bottles made of different materials in the West that, when the size and shape were appropriate, were adapted for use as a snuff bottle. The piece next to this bottle is also very special. It has a gold core with intricate scrolling vine designs carved into its surface. The inserts in the center on both sides show a bouquet of flowers inlaid with rare gemstones imported from the West. This combination of Chinese and Western themes was considered to be uniquely beautiful, and this snuff bottle was probably made especially for the emperor. The next theme of this gallery is craftsmanship. In this area, we'll talk about the other materials that were commonly used to craft snuff bottles. For example, in this display case, these bottles were made with all different kinds of jade and were crafted in different shapes and forms. This bottle, for example, was a sword fitting, reshaped to be used as a snuff bottle during the Qianlong era. Beyond just the shape of the bottles, you can also appreciate the different shapes and styles of their caps and lids. Among all of the caps shown in this section, you can see virtually every precious gemstone and metal being used. This group of bottles is interesting because they are reshaped from Ming Dynasty jade. Here are some lavender and emerald green jadeite bottles. There are many bottles here whose shapes draw inspiration from nature. For example, there are some that are shaped like vegetables, such as bitter melon, gourd, and eggplant, while others are shaped like Liu Hai's three-legged toads. Snuff bottles were often stored in curio boxes due to their small size and were sorted by type, material, and shape. Besides jade, a great deal of snuff bottles were made of agate. Here are some examples of different banded agate snuff bottles. And some more bottles here, which are from plain chalcedony. Here are several small bottles made to imitate nature, popular during the Qianlong period. This one is in the shape of a Buddha's hand, also known as finger citron. The yellow of the agate becomes the yellow skin of the fruit. Other bottles are made from various minerals, such as jasper, marble, malachite, lapis lazuli, varieties of quartz, and aquamarine. Most minerals can be used to make snuff bottles. The last group is made of ceramics. They are painted in Famy Rose enamel, as we have seen previously. There is also monochrome celadon, blue and white, often all shaped to closely imitate nature. The next group you see here are all made from amber. Some are clear and others opaque, which might be root amber or beeswax amber. The bottles are both carved and left plain to show the material's beauty. If they are well hollowed out, these bottles are quite light in weight, and it was often said that clear amber could float on water. Besides the different kinds of jade and stone bottles, there were also many that were made of organic and plant materials. These snuff bottles often had designs that were inspired by nature, such as these, which are fashioned from gourds. This became popular during the Kangxi period and would have been quite difficult for a craftsman to accomplish. These interesting shapes were made of gourd grown into a mold, forcing the gourd to fill in all the spaces as it matures. That would have been quite a difficult task to accomplish. The peach seed with ivory top is carved in detail to depict scenes of the 18 Lohan. And this here is the smallest snuff bottle found in the Forbidden City. It's obviously too small to be used for inhaling snuff. The tiny spoon and cap are carved out of ivory. Because the Curio boxes mentioned before often would feature small items inside boxes, this tiny snuff bottle could fit perfectly inside a small box on the shelf. Another material that was commonly used was coral. I think we have some very beautiful coral snuff bottles here at the Palace Museum. This one in the shape of a bamboo stalk features plum blossoms on top and carved insects crawling up the sides. It reminds us of the exquisite bamboo-shaped enameled glass bottle we saw earlier. These next few bottles are made from bamboo veneer, a kind of bamboo where the processed inner core is used and placed on a wood base, a very difficult task to achieve. In this section, you can appreciate snuff bottles from the Palace collection made from all different sorts of materials. The final area of the gallery has the theme of narrative, which seeks to allow visitors to understand the circumstances in which these bottles were given as gifts, used or appreciated in the past. These 3 small glass bottles were sent as a gift in a larger ceramic container. Each bottle has slips of paper with Tong Ti Ching Yang written on it, which essentially means sneeze delicately, a message referring to the efficacy of the snuff. When inhaling snuff, there were specific kinds of tools that were often used. A snuff stick was used to taste the quality and flavor of the snuff. In China, people would use a small spoon to take a scoop of snuff and bring it to their nose. However, if you were sharing your snuff with others, you would not let them use your personal spoon. Rather, you would spoon the snuff onto a small dish and pass it to your friends. A tool called a snuff funnel was then developed, which would allow one to put snuff into their own snuff bottle through the neck of the bottle. There was also another tool that was used to sniff the snuff in order to tell if it was good or bad, similar to how people will often take a whiff of a glass of wine before drinking it. Because snuff was something that people would use all the time, you would often bring some tools and snuff dishes along with you in case you decided to inhale with some friends. Therefore, there were also small, beautifully designed boxes that people would use to carry their snuff and snuff tools in if they were going out. This small box contains 3 bottles of different materials and small snuff dishes, making up a very interesting grouping. Since the culture of snuff is a luxurious hobby, the elite often paid special attention to the accoutrements. Some were for sheer appreciation of their beauty, and some for show of wealth and status. The next box has 4 bottles and small dishes, all of excellent quality. In the box are shown a white jade and a green jadeite bottle, while 2 other similar bottles and a white jade dish are on display outside the box. Since there were many different flavours of snuff, people would often put snuff with a special flavour into a special bottle and house them in a box. There were also special tools for use within one's own quarters, and bottles that you could put on your table for ease of access or if you were entertaining. This small box with fitted compartments for the bottles shows the collector's taste. 2 inside painted old amber bottles fit nicely in this box. The inside painting was done by a famous artist, Yuen Chun San. They were purchased and added later to the Imperial collection. The glass box shown contains a bottle and a dish that could be placed on the table for easy access in a domestic setting. Here are some examples of silhouette agate bottles with snuff dishes and their covers to keep the snuff fresh when it was out of the bottle. And then here we have a set of 10 bottles in a fitted box made strictly for display purposes. Bottles were the same size and were made of the same material, with variation in nuances of the stone. It is truly a luxurious set. The boxes of 10 in similar material and design are usually imperial gift sets, not for practical use. Historical records showed that a set was given to the Dalai Lama. Here you see an ornate brocade cover for these box sets. That's pretty much the whole gallery, and now I'll say a bit more about the exhibit in conclusion. If you're coming to this exhibit to look at snuff bottles from the Qing court, you're seeing the best and most expensive snuff bottles in the whole world. Because the bottles are all from the Qing palace, they're extremely rare and well made. Snuff bottles were really only around during the Qing dynasty, but it's difficult to find the best ones, and then systematically explain their uniqueness to visitors, because there were so many produced from that time period. We split the exhibit up into innovation, craftsmanship, and narrative, and tried to explain the use and significance of snuff in the simplest, most direct way possible in order to make the exhibit as accessible as possible. Personally, I'm always the most amazed by and curious by the size and measurements of the snuff bottles, especially because the smallest are so small and the largest can be quite large. We also try to emphasize the natural quality of snuff bottles, as many of the designs are inspired by nature and some are created using naturally occurring materials such as stones and minerals. We use circles which represent the full moon and mountains as motifs throughout the exhibit to echo the presence of nature in the bottles themselves. This exhibit brings together every kind of Qing dynasty crafting technology and techniques, from the formation of glass to painting styles, to the use of different kinds of materials, whether organic or man-made. It also offers a microcosmic view of all of the artistic productions in the Qing dynasty. The snuff bottles from the Qing court are also one of a kind. Because of the combination of these themes, one can look at the exhibition from a collector's perspective, or from the perspective of someone interested in the craft itself, or the materials used and ways of displaying, presenting, and storing. All of these themes and perspectives are contained within the one exhibit. Snuff bottles may be small, but we can gain from them a vast wealth of knowledge. I hope you have enjoyed the exhibition and tour with me today. 谢谢. This tour was conducted by Ms. Hu Yi Li, the exhibition curator at the National Palace Museum. The English narration was executed by Claire Chu, director and secretary of the International Chinese Snuff Bottle Society and editor of its journal.